أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
واتل عليهم نبأ ابني آدم بالحق إذ قربا قربانا فتقبل من أحدهما ولم يتقبل من الآخر قال لأقتلنك قال إنما يتقبل الله من المتقين.
This verse from Surah Al-Ma'idah is the first account or the first documentation or mention of an event to occur on the earth. So everything before this event, which is mentioned in the Quran, are all events which happened in paradise, in the samawat, between Adam and Iblis and Allah and the angels. But this is the first verse to mention something happening on the earth. But Allah doesn't mention the names Habeel and Qabeel because He wants you to actually focus on the lessons we can extract from these events. And that's why Allah tells the Prophet, tell them about the story of the two sons of Adam until the end of the verses. So let's split this video into two parts. The first part will be discussing the events which have happened in as much detail as I know. And the second will be the lessons which I have personally extracted from the story between Habeel and Qabeel. So to continue in order of events from the previous episode, Adam and Hawa get sent down to earth. And Hawa becomes pregnant. And it's important to note that in each of Eve's or Hawa's pregnancy, she gets twins, a boy and a girl. And it was the Sharia of that time, or the law which Allah bestowed upon them, that the brother would marry a sister from a different pregnancy. So the brother couldn't marry the sister from the same pregnancy, which you're twins to, but it was instead a different pregnancy, which you had to marry that sibling of yours. Because obviously, how else are they going to marry? There's no one else. So when they both became mature enough, Adam alayhi salam told them to get married. So he says, Habeel, marry her, Qabeel, marry her. But Qabeel refused, saying that no one will take his twin. And Habeel tells him, but our father said so and so. Adam alayhi salam said this. But he still refused and said the same thing. So there's this disagreement, as we mentioned, and this disagreement eventually reaches Adam alayhi salam. So Adam alayhi salam proposes an idea to settle it. Adam asks them, do you both wish to know the command of Allah? Present an offering or a qurban or a sacrifice, each of you, and whichever offering Allah accepts, what He says will prevail. Habeel used to herd sheep while Qabeel used to farm crops. Moving on, Qabeel brought forth the poorest of his crops, but Habeel brought the best of his sheep. And for a sheep to be better, what that refers to is that the sheep was very fat and it was free of illnesses or abnormalities, right? So he brought the best sheep he could find to sacrifice to Allah, and they both placed it on top of the mountain. And it was a sunnah at that time of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept sacrifices through a fire from the sky. So the fire would eat up the sacrifice, and when it eats it up, that basically means that Allah has accepted this sacrifice. And during this time, there's no one on the earth besides 6 people. And they're all watching, seeing whose offering is going to be accepted. And so Habeel's offering was accepted, rightfully so. And so when this happens and Adam alayhi salam sees this, Adam alayhi salam says to Qabeel, well then, Habeel is going to marry your twin sister. But Qabeel refused again. He threatened to kill him if he gets close to his twin sister. And from the verse in Surah Al-Ma'idah, we can see that the response of Habeel was, Allah accepts only from those who are pious. And in another translation, those who are mindful of Him. And I quite like this translation a bit more because the word used is muttaqin, which refers to fearing Allah or God awareness or God consciousness, as I've mentioned previously. Now let's take a quick pause so we can kind of extract a lesson from this. In verses like these where people fall into sin or they fall into the hole of arrogance and selfishness, I really just like to think about the psychology or the behavior which makes them be that way. And I was watching this khutbah from Ustad Nouman Ali Khan, in which he really makes me realize that what Qabeel is going through is very, very similar to what Iblis went through when Allah told him to prostrate to Adam. You see, do you think if Iblis had taqwa or he feared Allah when he told him to prostrate, that he would have refused and started basically a whole argument? And do you think that if Qabeel had taqwa and really feared Allah, that he would have wanted to kill his brother, which actually solves absolutely nothing? Like, you kill him and then what? And you can see from both Iblis and Qabeel that this arrogance and this ego is involved. Now, this made me kind of think back in my school days, where there were those few people in the school who were extremely egotistic, but I always noticed that when they were alone and not in the middle of a class with 20 people, that suddenly they were different. But when there were so many eyes on them, suddenly they had the biggest ego in the whole class. And in Iblis's case, it's like he's surrounded by all of these angels. It's like, no, I'm not gonna humble myself to that level and prostrate to him. He sees himself as better than that. And in the case of Qabeel, for him to say yes to what his father Adam alayhi salam told him to do and what Habeel is telling him to do, this accepting is a defeat. It's like, again, you're humbling yourself. Your ego doesn't take the main lead anymore. And the reason why I'm trying to extract these lessons from these verses is because Allah did not tell us about such a specific event to be like, oh yeah, this is what happened one day between the two sons of Adam, and you should know them just for historical purposes. And another big idea or a big picture which these verses really aim to take a hit at is the idea of not caring about what people think. And it's something which is spoken about a lot, but I think people still fail to understand. It's a fitna for everyone to want to impress others, and when you actually get the attention for what you do from other people, then that becomes more important to you than, in a sense, impressing Allah. And that's the significance behind إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ, that God only accepts the sacrifice of those who are mindful of Him. It's a beautiful show of Iman that when no one really gives you the attention which you deserve of the good things which you do, that you get that attention from Allah, and that you have faith that, you know, those nightly prayers which you've been doing for hours every day, or the hours of Quran you've been reading which no one sees, or maybe that your recitation in front of people is really bad because you get nervous, but at home you recite beautifully with a lot of khushu', and you have peace with the fact that Allah sees this. And in a sense, you are impressing Allah. And that is better than impressing people to the point where it becomes sum'ah and riya', where you care about people accepting your actions and not Allah accepting your actions. And so Qabeel still refuses, and we can continue on the verses of Surah Al-Ma'idah. If you raise your hand to kill me, I will not raise mine to kill you, because I fear Allah, the Lord of all worlds. I want to let you bear your sin against me along with your other sins. Then you will be one of those destined to the fire, and that is the reward of the wrongdoers. Now, I absolutely love this verse, and I want to highlight two very important things which I have thought about when reading this verse. The first thing is the role of a Muslim in giving da'wah. And that is da'wah through your words, through your actions, and through your manners. So here is Habeel being threatened that Qabeel is going to kill him. And it's very instinctual for a person to panic, for a person to be like, no, what the heck are you doing? What are you saying? Or have you lost your mind? Or, you know, to kind of go back and hesitate. But Habeel does something beautiful, which is that in this moment where it's normal to do all of these things I just mentioned. He brings up the remembrance of Allah, the day of judgment, the punishment of Allah, the hellfire. And this is Habeel indirectly giving da'wah to Qabeel by reminding him that these are the consequences for the things that you are about to do. And this reminds me of Ghazwat al-Ahzab, the Battle of the Trench, where the first fight which broke out was actually between Ali ibn Abi Talib and one of the kuffar. And right before starting the duel, Ali ibn Abi Talib told this person that I'll give you one last chance to bear witness that there is no God but Allah and the Prophet Muhammad is his messenger. So it's the idea that even in these moments where it's very climactic and killing is involved, there is still da'wah being involved. And that's what Ali ibn Abi Talib did in his case, and what Habeel is actually doing in his case with Qabeel. The other amazing thing which Habeel is doing is that he stops himself from playing the shaitan's game from the very start. So clearly, the shaitan's whispers have gotten to Qabeel's head. But a bigger victory for the shaitan would be that this whisper or this waswasa transfers to problems between people, where Habeel is not necessarily sinning, but at least he feels paranoid and he wants to fight back perhaps, or threaten Qabeel back. And that would be him playing the shaitan's game, because when the shaitan sees these problems breaking out between people, he's going to feel like, yes, this is what I want this to keep progressing. And that's why Habeel says that if you lay a hand on me, I'm not going to do anything back. And that's not to highlight the fact that, hey, if you start punching me, elbowing me and doing a whole ground and pound, that I'm just going to let you kill me. But it's more to highlight the fact that, hey, I'm not scared of you, I'm scared of the Lord of the worlds, and I'm not going to be giving you the attention which the shaitan in this case really wants you to do back. Like, imagine a scenario in school, which is actually very common, sadly, where a person swears at another person's mother. Do you think the shaitan wants you to reply back and say, hey, fear Allah, or hey, may Allah forgive you? Or do you think the shaitan wants you to swear at his mother back? Or perhaps say something even worse, which then breaks out to a fight, and then breaks out to an even bigger problem? I gotta be honest though, I feel like I can't do what Habeel is doing in this situation. Like, if someone did something to me like this, I don't know if I'd be able to say, hey, I'm not gonna do anything back. But I guess that's just from my human side. So this idea of killing Habeel grows in Qabeel's head, and one day he finds Habeel asleep, probably resting from a day's work of herding sheep. And Qabeel approaches him, he takes a massive rock, and as we all know, he hits his brother's head and he dies. And that was the first murder recorded or to happen in human history. And it's crazy because at this time there's only 6 people on the planet. Well, now there's 5 because one of them's dead. But this is basically something which Qabeel invented. There was nothing between the humans called killing before. So he quite literally invented this sin for the humans. And this is where Adam and Hawa really get to taste the trials and tribulations of life. Imagine you as a father, as a mother, as a prophet, and you have a son who is a murderer and a son who is murdered. So now Qabeel picks up his brother's corpse, he wants to hide it somewhere, and he's getting tired from the weight of it and from the stench of it, and he starts to feel guilty for what he has done. So his anger is now subsiding and he's basically coming to his senses. And a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that he sends 2 ravens or 2 crows, which they both start fighting. And that results in the death of one of them, and the raven, which is alive, starts to use its beak and its claws to essentially dig a hole and put the raven inside and cover it with sand. Allah teaching Qabeel, more so teaching humanity what to do with a corpse. And Qabeel sees this and he feels ashamed because even the burial of his brother is something he couldn't do alone. So he already feels guilty, and Allah even had to show him how to bury his brother. So I want to take away of this video to be that history is like a whole ocean of events. And in the Quran, Allah picks a few drops of this ocean and He shares them with you in His speech or in the Quran. So we as Muslims, we need to kind of ponder and think, why did Allah share this? Let me look at the tafsir. but also let me ponder on my own and see how I can apply this to my life. And in this video, I just shared a few things which I was thinking about and how we can apply some lessons from the story into our lives. And as a closure to the story, Adam alayhi salam has a new son by the name of Sheath. And Sheath translates to gift from Allah. And it's very appropriate in this time to receive a gift, considering that his son Habeel died, and he died in such a way that Adam alayhi salam receives this amazing gift from Allah. It is considered by some scholars that Sheath is a prophet of Allah and that there are scriptures which were sent down to him, and by others that he's an extremely righteous person but not a prophet. Regardless, at this time, from Adam, now we have two groups of people, the people of Sheath and the people of Qabeel, with the people of Sheath being more righteous than the people of Qabeel. But still, during this time, there is complete Tawheed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no such thing as shirk yet. But unfortunately, the people of Qabeel do start getting worse and worse. For instance, things like the first case of zina and the first showcase of musical instruments, and how that can lead to things like zina and free mixing. And Adam alayhi salam was actually worried for Sheath, worried that Qabeel would be jealous of the knowledge which Allah has bestowed upon him. Because clearly when Allah chose Habeel last time in the sacrifice, we all know where that went. So Adam alayhi salam, being the great father he is, did not want history to repeat itself. And inshallah, we're going to continue in the next episode with Idris alayhi salam, and then the first messenger of Islam and not the first prophet.